Hi everyone, this is Nick Pollock here from Roar Lions Roar. While you're here, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that alert bell so you never miss any of our new content. And if you prefer to listen instead of watch, make sure you check us out on your podcast platform of choice where you can subscribe and download each new episode. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Go State!
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host, Bill DeFilippo, joined tonight by my co-host, Matt Filipovitz. Matt, what's going on?
Bill, I was watching Family Feud right before we started recording, and it was the fast money round where, as our listeners I'm sure know, that's where you have two people try to get 200 points. And it was like the layup question, and both people got 0 points with their answer, and it actively made me upset.
Let's play the game. What
Okay.
was the question? And I will try and answer it as quickly as I possibly can.
What's a color of crayon that is even in the cheapest pack?
Red.
That was number one answer. These people, Bill, picked orange and gray. I was like actively upset at this episode of Family Feud about 25 minutes ago. But since then, I've focused up and I am excited to talk what has been a busy week in the Penn State football world, to say the least.
Yeah, very busy week for the Nittany Lions. There's some stuff that isn't necessarily related to the playoff that we will get to a little bit later. One of these things does have to do with Penn State in the playoff, but we have some odds and ends at the very end of this podcast. But the big thing we're here for is that Penn State is in the college football playoff, expanded out to 12 teams. And in the first year of the 12-team playoff, the Nittany Lions made it in as the 6th seed. They will play host to SMU on Saturday, December 21st at noon in Happy Valley. Matt, it's been a long time coming. This is a thing that we as Penn State fans have wanted for years and years and years at this point. And like I've kind of been open in my belief that I don't care about Penn State getting into the first round of the playoff. I want Penn State to be a team that can compete for a national championship. But even with that acknowledgement, I'm still taking a step back and going like, man, it's really cool that the Nittany Lions are in this spot hosting a playoff game. It's going to be a big Saturday afternoon in Beaver Stadium.
A couple of things. First of all, have you seen the patch that is going on the uniforms for the college football playoff first round? It's absurd.
It's big.
It's big. It's noticeable. And it's kind of nuts. That aside, Bill, I'm so excited for this game. Like, I'm going to the game. I haven't been to a Penn State game since they played Delaware last year, where it was like 105 degrees, and now I'm going when it's going to be like 22 degrees, which is great. I think it's very cool that Penn State gets to kick off the first Saturday of the expanded playoff with what should be an electric environment. I think what Penn State showed against Oregon has me feeling really excited to see what's next. Like, take out the playoff aspect of it all. I'm excited to watch what the next step development for the Penn State offense looks like after they played the best game of the year against Oregon. And an Oregon team, that's the number one team in the country. Like, you even take all that out and just look at the football on the field aspect of this. That's going to be great. But the spectacle of it all, how so many people have waited so long for Penn State to be in this position and for them to finally do it at home in what looks like some good old-fashioned northern football weather just has me really excited for this weekend.
Yeah, I'm excited because of the spectacle. I'm excited in large part because this is like, even when the playoff was formed in 2014, I thought 4 teams was ridiculous. I thought that it was way too small, and part of having a playoff that I really wanted was for them to put games on college camp. Like, I think the thing that makes college football special is the environment.
Yep.
And the fact that Penn State's first playoff, obviously we would have loved for Penn State's first playoff game to be in 2016 or 2017 or another year during the 4-game playoff. But there is something special about the fact that Penn State's first playoff game is going to happen in Beaver Stadium in front of what will hopefully be a sellout crowd. I know Pat Kraft said this week something about the Nittany Lions having some trouble selling the game out. And there's been weirdness with tickets in just about every single home playoff game. I'm expecting a lot of people from lovely Knoxville, Tennessee to come to my city this weekend. Student section is going to be a little smaller than it usually has been. Like you mentioned, stuff with the weather, man. There's just like there's a lot of like nonsense around this game, a lot of nonsense around how this playoff is working. Like the discourse about Penn State either makes it to the semifinal or it's like just ignoring how good the other team is. There's a lot of stuff that is like designed to drive me insane in all of this. But I think when I take a step back, like I'm just appreciative of the fact that we are in this spot, that we're going to be watching Penn State play a team that I wonder if they ever played SMU before. Do you know that?
I don't believe they have off the top of my head. I didn't see anything in Wikipedia.
I have pulled up Wikipedia. They played one time. It was in State College in 1978. Penn State won 26-21.
Great
so
game.
This is the second. Yeah, I remember a lot of it. Let's see. I would have been nowhere near close to born yet. So yeah, don't remember a damn thing. But yeah, the fact that it's an opponent that Penn State never plays in Penn State's building, with like the stakes of a playoff game associated with it, like when you take a step back, if you can ignore whatever stuff you need to ignore, whether it's around the playoffs specifically, whether it's, kind of the circumstances that pushed Bo Prabula out, whether it is any other number of things, this is just such a cool opportunity for Penn State football.
It's going to be a great showcase. Like, it's a standalone game on a Saturday at noon Eastern. The only thing on TV, it's on TNT, by the way, for those of you who are going to be looking for the game to watch. Also streaming on Max. I want to make sure I get that out there. It's going to be a great way for Penn State to kind of showcase what it's become and what this team has developed into under James Franklin. The narrative is always, can they win the big game? Like, if Franklin wins a playoff game, he'll have more playoff games this decade than the entire city of Pittsburgh's pro sports teams. Like, you can really change narratives with this kind of game and show that you are a successful organization, a successful franchise, a successful program by winning playoff games, no matter who they're against. And I get people view SMU as, this ACC team that just got called up from the G5. SMU is a really good football team. They're 12 in SP plus. They're like number 5 in offensive SP plus. That's no slouch of a team. And if Penn State can go out there and take care of business, there's still going to be the big game James narrative because of just people who only helmet scout, but this can be a true opportunity for this program to shake a lot of demons out. And that's what I'm excited to watch.
I'm a little more skeptical about that than you are, but that's something we can get to later. I just want to offer
for losing the narrative.
I think if Penn State beats SMU, I remember this conversation when Penn State played Memphis in the Cotton Bowl. Yeah, Penn State won that game, but they're supposed to. Supposed to. We'll forget the fact that Penn State is 9th in SMU is 12th in SP plus. We'll forget whatever other stuff. When you look at what the two programs are, one is the blue blood in the Big Ten. The other is, like you mentioned, the newcomers in the ACC that got the death penalty and, their best years were in the 70s or whatever it is. I think if Penn State beats SMU, it's going to be great. Do it against Ohio State or Oregon. Great, do it against Georgia. Great, do it against Notre Dame or Texas. I don't think if Penn State wins this game, it is going to present an opportunity to change narratives in that regard. I think that would also be if Penn State beats Boise in the next game.
Right.
But I think if Penn State loses this game, everyone is all of a sudden going to talk about how good SMU is and how good SMU is, but at the same time talking about how SMU is actually bad and Penn State should be. Like, my general thing is I don't give a shit what like people on the internet say in terms of trying to put some sort of like narrative around it. That's just never been how I like to view sport. I don't care about I don't care about what the person who goes on to the Josh Pate show says about Penn State.
Right.
What I care about is what does Penn State do when the football game happens? And if Penn State is able to go out and be an SMU team that not enough people, like, I do not think people are respecting how good SMU is.
They're really good.
Going
That's
back
a
to
good
Josh
team.
Pate, going back to Josh Pate, he did his like a 2-minute preview of the game. And with respect to Josh Pate, who I know is someone who really cares, really works hard, he basically presented this game as all the pressure is on Penn State. None of the pressure is on SMU. SMU can go out and play like a team that doesn't have pressure on them. Penn State, the
I kind of agree
narrative,
with that,
blah,
though.
blah, blah. I disagree with that completely.
Really?
Because when you are in a playoff and you are competing for a championship, there is pressure on you no matter what. The pressure that is on Penn State is the pressure that is on SMU, because the goal in this is not to be able to like give PTI something to talk about. The goal is to win a national championship. The goal is to compete for a national championship. And like, I just kind of fundamentally disagree with, if Penn State struggles in this game or loses in this game, it's going to be because, people on the sideline or people on the field are thinking about, oh no, just like how we couldn't beat Ohio State in 2017, we can't beat SMU now because it's a big game. Like I just fundamentally disagree with that stuff.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying, Bill, and maybe I worded my thing poorly. Like, externally, like, there's going to be that sect of people who, they're never going to view James Franklin or this program as going in the right direction or being successful until they beat Ohio State like 5 straight years or they win a natty. But I'm talking about like, and I did word this point now that I think about it, like the way Penn State played Oregon and the fearlessness they played with is like something we haven't seen them play with against like Ohio State or Michigan in quite a long time. So like the getting the monkey off your back narrative, like,
Sure.
I think applies for Penn State internally. And I did word that poorly, so I want to make sure I apologize for that. But like,
and in fairness to you, like the big game James thing, that's not something that you're talking about here.
No,
that
it's
is
not.
something that people talk about all the goddamn time.
Right.
Thinking that
there's no
like,
bigger game than a playoff game. There's never been
Yeah.
a bigger game for Penn State than the game that is going to be played on Saturday at noon. I think that's beyond fair to say. Like, outside of like the Natties in the 90s or 80s, excuse me. So yeah, Bill, like I think that this is a Penn State team that really, I think, shook off some internal demons against Oregon with their ability to score, not at will, but like when it mattered the most, they could put up points in a pinch and they could run the football in a way that Penn State should be able to run the football like. And I'm really excited to see how they build upon that. And if they're able to play like that and then get a win, I think that's just going to skyrocket this team's confidence. Not that it's not already playing confidently, but I think it can take it to a whole new stratosphere ahead of whatever comes next, should they win the game.
Well, whatever comes next would be Boise State in,
Right, well, yeah.
in the Fiesta Bowl. But yeah.
True. Yeah.
And also, I do want to correct one thing that you said. This decade, the Pittsburgh Penguins have won a combined 5 playoff games.
Do games count as series? Do we want to count that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. It's not a series.
Because you said okay,
right.
games, not
right.
series. Yeah.
You're right. Fair enough.
Correct. They have yet to. They have not won a playoff series in a minute, but Penn State has actually a way to catch. They would not be able to pass the city of Pittsburgh in playoff games won in the 4 sports of college football with it.
Advancing to a second round of a playoff, they can surpass what's like a legendary sports city.
Did Pitt basketball?
Duquesne did.
Duquesne did, but I'm trying to remember if Pitt basketball, because they made the NCAA tournament like once or twice over the last couple of years, and I can't remember if they ever got to the round of 32.
I could be wrong.
Let me check. Last year,
they got left out.
Last year they got left out. Yes, the year before that they made it to. Yes, they did make it to the round of 32. They won a Dayton game and then beat Iowa State and then lost to Xavier. The Iowa State game ended 59-41. So some real Big Ten basketball.
Sick.
But yes. So yes, we will go back and post and maybe edit that line out. But neither here nor there.
I'm the one who edits. I'm not doing that. I stand by what I said.
There you go. So just generally, Matt, how are you feeling about this game heading into it from the perspective of like the football game that is going to be happening in front of us?
I think it's going to be a really fascinating not chess match. It's going to be that, but I'm really fascinated to see what lessons Tom Allen learned, because similar to how Oregon wanted to attack Penn State, where it was very different than traditional Big Ten offenses. It's Oregon spread everybody out, 53 and a third. They went 5 wide all the time. They took advantage of Penn State playing a lot of man, and they picked guys apart with Tez Johnson underneath. It was a very smart game plan, and because of how important it is for Oregon to spread the ball out a ton, it was very successful. SMU does the same thing. Like, I have their numbers up in front of me, Bill. Their top 3 receivers, 38 catches, 35 catches, 31 catches. Their running back, 35 catches. Their 2 tight ends, 24 and 22 catches. And then wide receiver 4 for them, 20 catches. They spread the ball out a ton. This isn't there's one guy who you have to stop. You have to defend every single person who was eligible for the Penn State defense. Offensively, I think Penn State's going to have a great game plan. I feel really good about it coming off of the Oregon game. But defensively, I need to see Penn State play up to the standard that they have set for themselves in order for me to think Penn State has a shot to make a run in these playoffs. If they can go out there and if they can flip that switch and be the Penn State defense again, I'll feel really good. But man, that's a tall task, because that quarterback, Kevin Jennings, he wasn't even starting for them at the start of the year, but he has come in.
He was injured, I believe.
Yeah, well, Preston Stone was the returning starter because he started a bit for them in 2023, I want to say. Somebody can check me on that, but that Jennings kid can play. He spreads the ball out well. He knows what he does, similar to Dylan Gabriel. Like, he understands what he has to do in this offense to be successful. And we just saw a quarterback who knew how to do that pick this team apart.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that interests me the most in this game, 2 things. One, the thing that Penn State got, like you mentioned, got killed on against Oregon was that they had one guy that they could go to over and over again and just beat Penn State every single time. I don't know if there is one specific guy who can do that for SMU. Roderick Daniels, their top receiver, 5'9", 182. Keyshawn Smith, a transfer from Miami who has spent the last 2 years at SMU, is 6'1". Jordan Hudson, a guy who transferred in from TCU again, 2 years, 6'1". Moochie Dixon, 6 feet tall. He's a transfer from Texas. Like, they don't really have. Daniel's probably the closest thing to a guy like Johnson, who could do that sort of thing, who could like shake someone in the slot, create a little bit of space, catch the ball, and then take off.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference, I would say, is 2 things. One, SMU just gets the ball to a billion different guys within their offense, and they're not shy about spreading the ball out, which could be a really difficult thing, but they have no qualms with doing that. And then 2, the thing that really has me interested is that they can really run the ball, both in terms of Brashard Smith, their top running back, who's at 5.9 yards per carry and has been a workhorse for them, but also Jennings is a very mobile quarterback. Like, one thing that I've said to a few of my friend groups in the lead up to this game is like, there's going to be a time when SMU is facing a 3rd and 20 and Penn State takes everything away and Jennings magically picks up a first down with his feet, and you just got to get ready for something like that to happen.
Yeah.
Because one thing with this SMU team is they're not as talented as the teams as a Penn State, as a Clemson, as a lot of the teams of this playoff, but they are agents of chaos and understand that if you can introduce chaos into a game, that is a way that an underdog can create an upset, and we will get to that a little bit later. And then defensively, their ability to stop teams from running the football.
Dude, their run defense, and again, their run defense is so good. And maybe I'm not that nervous about it, and I should be, because I'm thinking so much about how I thought the Oregon run defense was going to shut down Penn State, and Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton both churned out like 100 yards each. And, I don't want to make sure I want to make sure I avoid carrying that over, because it is 2 very different opponents. But that SMU run defense is no joke, dude. Those dudes can play up front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be a a really big game for the interior of Penn State's offensive line. Particularly, I think Nick Dawkins is a guy I'm going to be watching because he's a guy who's been able to get shoved around a little bit. And the two dudes in the middle of SMU's defense are 6'4", 285 and 6'4", 351. But we will get to all of that stuff here in a second. Before we do that, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Home Field Apparel. Home Field has been sponsoring us since we decided to go podcast only. They've been nothing but great to us. I have a couple bags over there with Christmas gifts. I used Home Field as a way to get gifts for people who are not Penn State fans because they have an incredible selection of stuff that isn't just Penn State, in addition to what is a really great Penn State collection. I'm wearing a hoodie right now. I've been wearing t-shirts and sweaters and hoodies all week. Home Field has basically been fitting me out for this, and for the last however many days.
I'm bummed. With it being a whiteout this week, I've been really into wearing my Penn State coach's jacket, Bill, which I know you've become a fan of after seeing me wear it in person in Indy. It is like my favorite thing to wear, and I'm bummed I can't really wear it to the game with it being a whiteout, but you better believe my white Home Field t-shirt is going to be on underneath all of my layers I'm going to have in that stadium.
Yeah, if you are someone who is in need of warm weather gear, it probably won't be into you by the time that Penn State takes the field on Saturday afternoon. But they have jackets, they have hoodies, they have sweaters, they have quarter zips, they have so much unique stuff. They just unveiled a knit sweater.
It looks
that
sick.
I really want to be able to get my hands on. I love the lion mascot that they used on that. They have a ton of stuff in their collection that you will want to have in your closet. And again, with the holidays right around the corner, if you have a friend, if you have a loved one who is a Penn State fan, is a graduate of another school, whatever it might be, there's a good chance that Home Field Apparel has something from that school that you can get for them. Or if you're a graduate of another school and you just like Penn State and you listen to this podcast as a result, there's a good chance that Home Field Apparel has your school in its collection. If you want to be able to get your hands on something from Home Field Apparel, use the promo code RLR24 for 15% off of your first order. Again, use the promo code RLR24 for 15% off of your first order. Thank you again to Home Field Apparel for sponsoring this edition of the podcast.
Two things,
Matt,
Bill.
Let's get
Two
go
things. Their SMU
ahead.
collection is fantastic. It's really, really, really great stuff. The orange, I think, just looks really sharp. And Bill, do you know who SMU's quarterback's coach is? He was a really fun college football player. He's not. There's no connection to Penn State, but he was a very, very fun college football player in recent history.
Can I get a hint on where he went to school, or do you think that would give it away?
He was a transfer. I think you would know him best from his time at Miami.
Ja'Cory Harris.
It is not Ja'Cory Harris. It is De'Aaron King.
Really? Huh.
Yeah. Isn't that cool? I was surprised when I saw that.
How old is De'Aaron?
He was one of the guys who was in college for a million years, though, because of COVID. So he could be like 28. He's 27.
Yeah, he's 27 years old. He was a hell of a football player. Damn, I didn't realize he went from offensive analyst to quarterbacks coach. Although I do imagine that being the quarterbacks coach under Rhett Lashley is, I don't want to say a ceremonial position because that's underselling De'Aaron King, but Rhett Lashley, SMU's head coach, is a guy who has coached. He's been an offensive coordinator and a quarterbacks coach for quite some time. Stops in his Stanford, Arkansas State, Auburn, UConn. An original stint at SMU before. He was actually Manny Diaz's offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for Manny's final year at Miami before returning to SMU in 2022. 7-6 in his first year, 11-3 last year in his final year in the American Athletic Conference, and this year 11-2, 8-0, first place in the ACC. They're coming off of a heartbreaking loss to Clemson in the ACC championship game where Clemson raced out to a 24-7 lead at halftime. SMU was able to tie things up at 31 each, and then Clemson won on like a 56-yard field goal as time expired. I think it was like the longest field goal.
It was a hell of a kick.
Walk-off field goal in like conference championship game history.
It was a good kick.
Like that. But I think that's pretty instructive, Matt, because one thing with this game is that with SMU's ability to move the football, they are never going to be fully out of a game. And slow starts have been an issue for Penn State, as we all know, throughout this season. This is one of those games where if Penn State doesn't have its A game early on, it is possible that SMU is able to get up and build themselves up a cushion that is going to be very difficult for Penn State to work its way back from.
Yeah. The thing about being the kind of team that can race back against a team of the caliber of Clemson, like I don't think Clemson's world beaters, but that's still a program that recruits like a top 10 program year in and year out. I know they're a bit archaic with the transfer portal, but the bones of that program are very good.
Oh, so you missed the big news today.
I saw the transfer. They did. Well, it's
Dabo
an
got
FCS transfer.
Dabo Swinney got his first ever transfer portal player, a wide receiver from Southeast Missouri State.
Yeah, so good for Dabo. But all that being said, that kind of tells me that this SMU offense has a switch it is able to flip and go supernova, which is a really dangerous thing to have, especially for a Penn State team that, although they've done a very good job burying teams once they get out to that lead, there is always that concern that the defense can get a little bit lax, the offense can take its foot off the gas and allow a team to come roaring back. I don't believe in a playoff environment that's going to be the case, but Penn State really has to have a lead of 3+ scores, which I do not believe will happen in this game, for me to feel like Penn State is going to cruise to victory. I think this is going to be a battle, and Jennings and that offense and those receivers and that tight end, RJ Maryland, he doesn't have the gaudiest stats, but that dude is a ball player. I think RJ Maryland, the tight end, is a really, really good football player. So there's just going to be a lot of guys on the Penn State defense who need to step up and make sure that SMU cannot get out of first and second gear. Because if they get into their third and fourth gear, it's going to become a shootout. And I don't want Penn State to have to be in a shootout 2 consecutive games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And then the other side of the football, SMU is a group of players who are really good at getting to the quarterback, getting takeaways. You know, they're not the best of the best in these sorts of things, but they're very good at limiting you to on kind of a down to down basis. Every once in a while, they will get beaten for big plays, but they're good at beating you on a down to down basis. They have a few guys
they can control that line of scrimmage really well.
Yeah, they have guys who can rush the passer. They have guys who could make plays in the secondary. So it's a really interesting matchup for Penn State. Like I mentioned, if you look at this from just what you imagine Penn State is supposed to be versus what you imagine SMU is supposed to be, this shouldn't be a football game. I'm not going into this game thinking that. I think this is going to be a really difficult game for Penn State to come out on top in. SMU 12th in SP plus, 4 offensively, 26 defensively, 52nd in special teams. Las Vegas as Penn State is an 8.5 point favorite, and that hasn't moved in one direction or the other. SP plus has Penn State winning this game by 5 points. So it looks like a really close game on paper. It's again, if you put SMU in Michigan's jerseys or something, and you'd probably think, okay, this is going to be a pretty close, fair, tense, tight football game. But this is still a game where Penn State is in a good position to win, Matt. And let's start with when Penn State's offense going up against SMU's defense. What just generally has you interested in this matchup?
Control the clock. Penn State, I know, was looking for explosive plays, and they were able to find them in the run game. And I think Penn State needs to rely on its run game yet again. Explosive plays are going to come against this defense, but the way Penn State wins this game is kind of the opposite of how I said they were going to win the Oregon game. And I was completely dead wrong on how the Oregon, game shook out in terms of Penn State running the football. I think Penn State is going to need a lot of these 7 to 8 yard runs that Nick Singleton and Katron Allen kept on getting. It is going to be a game in a cold environment. I don't think the chance of snow is all that high, but it's definitely there. It's like 30% last I checked. And that's not to say that Drew, Tyler Warren, Amari Evans, Trey Wallace. First of all, Trey Wallace and Amari Evans had phenomenal games in the Big Ten title game. That was awesome to see out of those guys. But I don't think this is the kind of game where you want to push the ball downfield to that receiver group or even to Tyler Warren. Rely on the guys who can run the football effectively, consistently. And again, I know we spent a lot of time talking about how good the SMU front is, but we said the same thing about Oregon. This Penn State offensive line really gelled with Nolan Rucci in there. Nick Dawkins played a great game. Vega's been playing great ball. Like, this is an opportunity for this team to run the football, control the clock, keep SMU on the sideline, keep that offense cold. And if Penn State can do that, I like their odds to win this game by 2 scores.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the weather right now, they're expecting a 45% chance of snow on Friday, 50% in the morning, 40% in the afternoon, and then Saturday, 4% chance of precipitation and 27 degrees outside with 11-mile-an-hour winds. I'm interested in what you just said, because when you watch SMU, what they like to do, one, they have their cornerbacks play a ton of they're manning up guys on the outside, and they really do a good job of packing guys into the box with their 3 or 4 down linemen and their 2 starting linebackers, Kobe Wilson and Ahmad Walker, right up, not at the line of scrimmage, but right behind the big fellas in the trenches, just trying to take away as much as they possibly can at the line of scrimmage, while having their 2 safeties playing a little bit of deep to also try and take away things farther down the field. I'm going to read something for Bill Connolly from 8 days ago. Don't blitz recklessly, but keep safeties relatively close to the line of scrimmage, risking big plays in the name of efficiency. Safeties Ahmad Moses and Jonathan McGill, and slot corner Kill Sanders Jr.'s have combined for 13 tackles for loss, 9 run stops, and a sack, in addition to their general ball hawking duties. Excellent tackling. Mustangs 9th in yards per play. I mean, at the time they were 9th in yards per play, 6th in percentage of plays, gaining 20 plus yards, and 14th in success rate allowed. They do everything well on the defensive side of the football. Some stats that I jotted down: they're allowing 4.6 yards per play, which is tied for 10th nationally. Opponents are converting 32.78% of their third downs against them, which is 15th nationally. 2.8 yards per rush, which is 3rd nationally. Opponents are completing 57.24% of their passes against them, which is 19th nationally. Sacking opposing quarterbacks in 7.72% of their dropbacks, which is 31st nationally. 6.6 yards per attempt is tied for 32nd nationally, and 11.5 yards per completion is tied for 46th nationally. 1.5 takeaways a game, which is tied for 41st nationally. And Matt, when I look at this SMU team, when I look at how they do everything pretty well, I generally think that, one, stating the obvious here, Penn State has to hold up at the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
Penn State has to be able to deal with whatever SMU is going to throw at them at the line of scrimmage. And 2, I think this is going to be one of those games where Drew Aller's ability to buy himself an extra half second, an extra second, 2 seconds, whatever, by just moving around and getting out of pressure and avoiding pressure is going to be very, very valuable. Because one thing, when you look through SMU this season, they've played some decent football teams. Penn State's offense is the best offense they have played. Second best offense behind Louisville's offense that they have played this year. And Louisville went for 27 points, 461 yards of total offense, and nearly 10 yards per completion. So
pretty good.
Yeah, I think Penn State having a quarterback who's able to buy a little bit of extra time, and having, understanding that it's going to be really hard to get big plays against this defense. So you take those 4 or 5 yard runs, 8, 9 yard passes, and play consistent football, play success rate football, do everything you can not to make mistakes, because this is a defense and a team that just generally thrives on forcing you into mistakes.
Yep.
And I think they're going to be okay. And again, a lot of that comes back to Drew Aller and how he is able to avoid making mistakes on one hand, but also when he has an opportunity to get a little something extra out of the play, he is able to take advantage of that.
He's really proved that. I mean, the Oregon touchdown, where he's getting brought down by not Tui, oh my God, Uiagalelei, excuse me, towards the end of that one, and he just rifled it in there to Trey. We've seen Drew Aller be able to do that. Throwing the football, Bill, I mean, what Drew has been able to do lately, he's looked very in command. I think he's really thrown some NFL caliber balls as of late. Again, I don't know if the receivers are going to be massively involved in this game again, because I do think it can be a very big Tyler Warren game, just with how efficient Penn State has been running the football. If they don't try to keep that up, if that forces SMU to keep an extra linebacker in the box to help out those defensive tackles, which is something they haven't had to do all season long because those defensive tackles have been dominant from the jump. So if Penn State is able to play like they did against Oregon, I think it can have them lean on the run game and open up Tyler Warren a lot of really good opportunities. And with that, could also come the opportunity for Drew Aller to have a pretty good day with his legs.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that Drew is the best quarterback that SMU, for how good SMU's defense has been. They've been very, very good this year. Drew's the best quarterback they're going to have played. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen are the best running back duo they are going to have played. And Tyler Warren is just the best player that they are going to have played. So there's going to be a lot of having to adjust things on their end. I do want to ask you this, Matt, and this is something that we're going to talk about a little bit more at the end of the podcast. How concerned are you about the fact that Bo Prabula is not going to be with the team?
I'll give my Bo thoughts later, like on like a big picture thing, but in terms of like this specific game, I mean, Bo came in and did pretty well against Wisconsin a couple weeks back. I guess 2 months ago at this point. He almost had a touchdown against Oregon. He also was responsible for the only sack of the game. Like, if Penn State loses this game, it's not going to be because they didn't have Bo Prabula.
Yeah, I will also share my thoughts for when we actually dive into Bo stuff. But like, I think that there is an old saying that John Gruden once asked Todd Moore, who was Peyton Manning's offense coordinator with the Colts, why the backups weren't getting more time in practice. And Tom Moore's quote was, "If 18 goes down, we're effed, and we don't practice effed." I think that if Drew goes down in this game, it doesn't matter if Bo Prabula is the backup or not. Like, I don't think they would beat this SMU team with a backup quarterback. And I also think that the quote unquote Bo package is a little bit underrated. We will
overrated.
Get to that
overrated, you think?
Overrated. Yeah, in terms of its impact, particularly in big games. So we'll get to that in a second. Instead, I want to flip to the other side of the football. Penn State's defense going up against SMU's offense.
Be better.
Offense that
be better than you just were.
Yes, be better than you just were. It is worth mentioning for how, Kevin Jennings is a good quarterback. They have good skill position players. Their offensive line can run a bit hot and cold, but they're still generally a good unit. They are not better than Oregon in anything.
They are not.
And I think that while there is some concern, I would say, there's definitely concern of Penn State coming off of their last game having to go up against SMU. When you look through the numbers, which I'll read here in a second, while SMU is good, while Rhett Lashley got a bit of a blueprint of what to do, I don't know if they will be able to consistently take it to Penn State's defense for 4 quarters in the way that Oregon was just able to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. My immediate thought here is, Bill, I know the game is going to be reffed by different refs than have done the Big Ten. What a weird way to say other conference refs for this. I think it's SEC crew for this.
I think it's SEC, yeah.
If I'm Abdul Carter and if I'm denied Dennis Sutton, I am selling that I am getting held religiously. I am saying, hey, clean slate with these officials. I am selling that this guy is holding me as insanely obviously as possible. Bill, you've called that a lot this week. This SMU team is very heavily penalized, I think is a good way to word it.
Brother, I cannot wait to say these numbers.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. Again, it's all going to start up front for Penn State. The running back for SMU is really good. Jennings is really good. The line, like you said, is hot and cold. Zane Duran's going to have a good game up front, but if this game is going to be controlled by any unit, it's going to be the Penn State edge rushers, because what I think they can do to SMU's tackles. SMU or Oregon really had to hold Abdul Carter a ton in that game. I cannot believe that he didn't get a single call all game long. Mm-hmm. I think Abdul can have a similar game to that. And I hope that he sells it as much as he can with new officials, because I think Abdul can get like 3 holding calls called against him or on behalf of
Wouldn't
him.
hate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both their SMU starts a pair of transfers at guard, tackle Savion Bird, a redshirt junior, PJ Williams, a redshirt sophomore, both guys who've transferred in. And my hunch is that, just as a general thing, that Penn State's going to find the guy who is having the worst game and say, Abdul, that one,
That
go
guy. Yep.
over and over and over again. Yeah. Some numbers on SMU's offense: yards per play, 6.1, tied for 26 nationally. They're converting 44.87% of their third downs, which is 22nd nationally. 4.2 yards per rush, which is tied for 70th nationally. Completing 64.36% of their completions, which is 35th nationally. Allowing sacks on 3.84% of dropbacks, which is 23rd nationally. 8.6 yards per attempt, which is 13th nationally. 13.4 yards per completion, which is tied for 19th nationally. And kind of one of the keys to this game, Matt, SMU turns the ball over 1.7 times per game, which is tied for 101st nationally. Some of that is inflated by their insane game against Duke, where they turned the ball over 6 times and won in overtime.
Shout out Manny.
Yeah. Shout out Manny Diaz, of course, Rhett Lashley's former boss. So Manny Diaz, someone who I would love to know how many like phone calls he took from the respective staffs over the last 2 weeks. Neither here nor there.
I wonder. The bigger question though is whose call did he return first? That's the bigger question.
Yeah. You would hope James. But yeah, this is a Penn State.
That's right. SMU's a conference foe.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Well, yeah. So SMU again hasn't really played a defense that is quite as good as Penn State's is. Penn State's 7th nationally in defensive plus. I think they're the best team that they might have played other than them. BYU is 23rd, Clemson is 22nd. So yeah, Penn State is a bit of a step up. Obviously, Penn State defense that showed some vulnerabilities last time out, Matt, but for how good SMU is offensively, for how unique SMU is offensively, this is still a team that, if Penn State just sticks to its principle of keep teams from being able to run the football on you and trust that your pass rush is going to be able to put enough pressure on the quarterback that takes care of things for you, they should be okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I already kind of talked about the front seven, but this could be a very big game for Penn State's linebackers. I do wonder if Penn State goes a little bit less man than they did against Oregon, because you kind of saw what happened in that example. There were a lot of times where Dylan Gabriel found a receiver and there was nobody really within, I think, about 7 yards of him, just by nature of how much man they play. I think that's a bad idea to play again. So I think it could be a very big game for Kobe King, Dom DeLuca, Tony Rojas, Anthony Specca, if he gets in, Tamir Robinson, understanding where they fit in zone and understanding they are responsible for protecting this part of the field. And hopefully, especially for a guy like Tony Rojas, who has shown a knack for picking off some balls, to make plays on footballs if the opportunity comes. Because like you said, almost 2 turnovers per game for that SMU team. Again, a lot of it's inflated because of Manny Diaz. Shout out to Manny as always. But I do think that this Penn State's, the back half of that first level, those linebackers are going to have a lot on their plate, as is Jalen Reed, who I believe is set to play. He did share a picture. He was in a car accident. Prayers up to Jalen. I hope all is well. It sounds like he's mostly fine, and should give it a go this weekend. But this could be a very big showcase game for Jalen Reed as well.
And I will mention SMU's 2 losses this year: 3 turnovers against BYU, 2 turnovers against Clemson. So they are still a team that is willing to give you the football. Jennings has been picked off 8 times on the season. They lost a couple of fumbles. There's been some stuff on SMU's side of things. I think Penn State, you shouting out Penn State's linebackers is a really smart shout, Matt, in large part because I think that Jennings' mobility is something that is going to give them problems. He's mobile. He's able to escape pressure. He's able to pick up yards with his legs when things break down. He has that fearlessness about him that, you want your quarterback to have in a big game on the road when you're going to be at a bit of a disadvantage talent-wise. So I'm very interested in how they deal with Jennings. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Tony Rojas or Dom DeLuca. Hopefully not Abdul Carter, because I want Abdul Carter rushing the passer, maybe even a bit of him, just spying him and making sure the second that he breaks the pocket, there is a really mean and athletic guy running at him.
I think that should be Jalen Reed to do that job.
I think they need Reed with how many weapons they have in the passing game. I think they need Reed in coverage.
You know, I mean,
obviously,
with Zion's emergence, though, I mean, you got Elliott Washington back, hopefully. Like, you just have enough pieces, I think, to move around. And let's call it what it is. Tony's shoulder isn't really all that well anymore. Like, and in terms of a guy who can muscle through tackles, like, Jennings isn't the biggest guy. He's generously listed at 6 foot, but he can truck you if the opportunity comes. So that's kind of where my, a sure tackle like Jalen Reed, I think, can really benefit there.
Sure, that's reasonable. I would still want a guy like Reed in coverage, in part because if they are going to put the ball in danger, I trust Jalen Reed and Zaki Wheatley to force turnovers more than I do just about anybody else on Penn State's defense. But you get them in situations where you put them in situations where you just got to tackle Jennings one-on-one, bottle up the run game to whatever extent that you can. And you're not going to be able to take away everything in the passing game, but you take away enough in the passing game, or you do the thing that you prevent the thing that Dylan Gabriel really killed Penn State on, which was he got the ball out in 1.9 seconds. If he got it out in 2 seconds, Abdul Carter denied into Sutton or Zane Durant is bearing down on him. If you can make Jennings hold on to the football that extra split second, which I think you can, because while Jennings is a good quarterback, good, talented QB who's a sophomore, he's got a lot of football ahead of him. He doesn't process the game like Dylan Gabriel, because nobody processes the game in the college level like Dylan Gabriel does. And nobody gets the ball out as quickly as Dylan Gabriel does. And nobody like that stuff. Mm-hmm. So if Penn State suddenly gets that extra beat to be able to make a play that they didn't have against Oregon, that's going to be big for them. My hunch, though, is that Rhett Lashley and his coaching staff watch that game and they're going to go, okay, we need to be able to have Kevin get the football out to Roderick, to Keyshawn, to Jordan, to Moochie, to RJ, to Matthew, to Brashard, to Jake, to whomever else as quickly as we possibly can. And if they can get into a rhythm doing that, Matt, I'm going to be really worried about this game, about their ability to do that, their ability to kind of build the running game off of that.
Yep.
And all of a sudden that potential for a snowball effect that Penn State just kind of can't slow down ends up popping back up.
If you have a chance to get off the field, you have to take your shot. You got to pick balls off. You've got to fight like hell for fumbles. You've got to get off the field on third down. You've got to get sacks. You've got to make this game as hostile and as just frustrating of an environment for SMU as you possibly can control on the field. And Penn State done a very good job against a lot of teams in doing that. They failed miserably against Oregon. And I really do hope that they watch the film, they learn from those mistakes. It's a good neck crack game for the Penn State defense to get back on track.
Agreed. And on both sides of the football, Matt, are there any players in particular for Penn State that you're really watching out for?
Offensively, I've been thinking a lot about this, and it's going to have to be Katron Allen. Dude, that dude ran the best I've seen him run in months on last Saturday. He is playing angry. He is running the football. He's hitting the hole hard. Like, he has just been really, really impressive for me. So I'm going to go with Katron offensively. And then defensively, it's Zion Tracy. That one specific play against Oregon where he blows up the play behind the line of scrimmage despite being held, Zion Tracy is figuring a lot of things out right before our eyes. And again, I don't think they're going to use Reed as a spy, but I don't think it would be a bad idea to have Reed do that occasionally and have Zion Tracy get in there and cover a guy one-on-one and make a play on the football if the opportunity comes. So it's those two for me.
Yeah. I'm not going with specific guys. I'm going with groups of guys.
Yeah.
For me, it's the interior of Penn State's offensive line going up against an SMU defense that is going to try and throw a lot at them, throw a lot of size and physicality and nastiness at them. How does Sal Wormley, how does Nick Dawkins, how does Vega Ioane hold up against a group that they're not as talented as Oregon's guys, but they are big and physical and tough to move around. And are they able to open up a little bit of space and give Nick and Katron opportunities to just churn out yards on the ground, whether that's against them or against their linebackers, because they've like I mentioned, Kobe Wilson, Ahmad Walker, Alexander Kilgore, they have a really talented group of linebackers that Penn State's going to have to deal with. And then the other side of this is Penn State's secondary. It just didn't hold up well enough against Oregon. And like I mentioned, I think SMU is a worse team, worse players, but they're still really good. And they have a really good coaching staff that is going to see where those kind of deficiencies are and try and take advantage of it. And there's a lot that is going to be put, not on the secondary, we'll say the back seven in general, including the linebackers, to just not allow those like windows of space to throw into that Dylan Gabriel picked them apart with over and over again. So those are the groups of guys that I'm looking at the most closely. This game, Penn State, again, 8.5-point favorite, opened at 8.5, has stayed at 8.5. Bill Connolly has Penn State winning this game at 30-25. FPI has Penn State has a 67.1% chance at winning this football game. Matt, what do you think of all of this? What do you think of the spread? What do you think of Penn State's chances? And what do you think is going to happen when the whistle blows on Saturday at about 3 or 4 p.m.?
I think the sun will be setting on the shortest day of the year in Happy Valley.
Ugh, disgusting.
I know, it sucks. But the good news is we get to watch football then all night afterwards at a bar, which will be fun. Penn State 35, SMU 27. I think Penn State is able to get points. I think SMU is able to move the football a bit as well before Penn State really settles in. I think the crowd and the conditions play a big factor in this. I think Drew Aller has an efficient day, nothing gaudy. I would probably say I make a prediction he doesn't throw for 200 yards in this game, but Nick Singleton and Katron Allen are able to show that what happened against Oregon was not a fluke, and they are those backs again. So give me Penn State 35, SMU 27. Penn State wins, does not cover that 8.5-point spread, but covers the SP plus spread.
Yeah, I actually like right around what SP Plus thinks. I think that with bad weather conditions, you should probably be a little bit more, or not bad, but less than good weather conditions. You shouldn't put as much onus on offenses,
Right.
and you should put more onus on defenses. As a result, I do think Penn State wins this game. I think ultimately their talent is able to win out. The fact that they just played a better version of SMU. This isn't a perfect example, but it's like seeing a pitcher who throws 90-mile-an-hour fastballs right after going against a pitcher who throws 100-mile-an-hour fastballs. Yes, a 90-mile-an-hour fastball is still a really fast pitch, but when you saw what you just saw, it is not going to seem as fast. I think Penn State's offense doesn't have a great day because of how SMU is able to bottle up the run, but they are able to do just enough. If I'm looking for like an analog for this game, I'd probably go more towards something like Minnesota.
Okay.
But where it's just like, it's a really tense, it's a really cagey game. But the difference, I think, ultimately in this game, it's a thing that you alluded to, Matt. SMU on the season gets penalized about 8.4 times per game, which is tied for 130th nationally. And they're allowing 81.8 yards per game in penalty yards, which is 133rd out of 134 teams in college football. Against Oregon, Tyler Warren had 84 receiving yards. So they basically give you one extra Tyler Warren as a receiver in penalty yards a game. I think that mixed with the fact that they got to come north and play in Happy Valley, with the fact that Penn State is a more talented football team that is coming off of a difficult loss, but one that I think they're going to learn and take a lot from, means I think something like Penn State 27, SMU 23
Okay.
in a really close, really tense, really cagey football game. I wouldn't be stunned if Penn State blows them out. I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if SMU picks up a comfortable win, just because when you have an offense as good as they have, you are capable of doing that. But I think above everything else, like Penn State's offense and team as a whole, showed some real balls against
They
Oregon.
did.
And I don't think this team is going to let an opportunity like this slip through their fingers on Saturday afternoon in Happy
No,
Valley.
Davon J. Thomas himself won't let that happen.
God, yeah. I if they're losing at halftime, I really hope the cameras catch whatever Devon says to the team, because I don't think it would be very nice.
No, it would not be.
Some odds and ends before we end this edition of the podcast. First off, we'll start with the quicker thing, which is that Penn State was able to pick up a player in the transfer portal at wide receiver, Kyron Hudson, formerly of USC. He was a receiver for the Trojans the last couple of years. He was a 4-star recruit on 24/7 ESPN and Rivals, and On3 wasn't around at the time to give him a recruiting ranking for his career with the Trojans. 57 receptions, 655 yards, and 5 touchdowns. This year, 38, 462, and 3. Matt, Penn State has been in the market for a receiver for quite some time. I don't think Kyron Hudson is I don't think he's the second coming of Jerry Rice or anything, but I think in Penn State's receiver room, he provides an injection of talent and a guy who should line up across from Trey Wallace, assuming he comes back, to just give Penn State that extra option that it hasn't had in its receiver room.
Yeah, more bodies in that room, guys who have played at a high level, guys who have produced at a high level. A thing I love to see is that he has really taken jumps every year. He goes from 2 catches in 22 to 17 in 23, 38 and 24. It's a guy who's continued to get better. He's played in a very creative offense for Lincoln Riley, so I feel like he's going to understand how he fits in Andy Kotelnicki's scheme. And I think anytime you can add a receiver to that Penn State receiver room, you want to try to do it. So good pickup. I'm excited that that's the first transfer portal ad of the year.
Yeah, I think that I don't know how fair of a comparison this is, just because I'm not familiar enough with Hudson's game. He did have a remarkable catch against LSU in the first game. Like, legitimately might have been the catch of the year in the very first game of the season. Penn State fans might remember him. He's the guy who scored USC's late touchdown on that little slant route, just cooked AJ Harris to get inside. But I'm hoping, he's a guy 6'1", 205. That is the exact height and weight that Mitchell Tinsley was. And even a Mitchell Tinsley in Penn State's receiver room is a huge addition going forward. Speaking of guys Penn State is going to have going forward, Drew Aller announced on Monday that he will be coming back for his senior season in Happy Valley, foregoing the 2025 NFL draft with eyes on the 2026 NFL draft. I don't think we have too terribly much to say about this, Matt, because this is probably the most cut and dry case of a thing being really good for Penn State that there is.
And good for Drew. I mean, betting favorite, I would think, to be the first round number 1 overall pick in 2026. Again, that's way too far away to know any better. But Drew, I think he's really going to benefit from another year in AK's scheme. And it's great for Penn State. Again, Penn State is going to maintain its status as the only team, I think, in major college football to not start a transfer at quarterback since the transfer portal became a thing. I can't think of any other team that hasn't done it. The stability, Aller is going to be the 4th starter for Penn State at quarterback to start at least 3 years. That's cool. Like, Penn State has proven to be a place where you can come in, you can get developed, you can make it to the NFL, and I think Aller has a chance to be the best of the bunch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Drew, from an NFL perspective, there is stuff that he still has to work on. If he came out this year, I wouldn't have been surprised if he was eventually able to get his way into the end of round 1, just because of how talented he is, how young he is, how good the flashes are. But another year under his belt to work on the consistency with which he's making decisions and throwing the ball accurately and all these sorts of things in an offense that he knows, with guys around him that he knows. Hopefully, Penn State has other guys who have to make decisions going forward. It's just a really good thing for Drew, a really good thing for Penn State, a really good thing for James Franklin. And yeah, he's going to be one of the guys with really good odds to go first overall in 2026 and win the Heisman in 2025. So very exciting for Drew, but the unfortunate part of this is that it always seemed like these were two things that were going to go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was a harbinger for Drew coming back, it was that on Sunday, Bo Prabula announced that he would be entering the transfer portal. I want to see if, let me see, I'm going to pull his entire statement up because I think his statement is, it's one that should be read. Because I think it was very telling what he put in here. Growing up in Pennsylvania has always been a dream of mine to play football for Penn State. Wearing the blue and white these last 3 years has brought me some of the greatest moments of my life. The current NCAA postseason model creates a challenge for student athletes. The overlapping college football playoff and transfer portal timeline has forced me into an impossible decision. After speaking at length with my family and coaches, it is with a heavy heart that I announced my intentions to enter the transfer portal and depart from the team to explore opportunities elsewhere. I want to thank the coaches, my teammates, the fan base, and everyone else who has supported me along this journey for the rest of my life. I stand proud as a Penn State graduate and letterman. We are, and that middle section, Matt,
It's gutting, dude.
Is the gut. It sucks. It hurts. Drew, Drew and Andy Kotelnicki both commented on it, but Franklin was. I'm going to go ahead and read his quotes now that I pulled it up. Bo Prabula has been a phenomenal teammate. He has been a big reason why we are where we are right now. He's a man's man. Like, came into my office and had multiple conversations with me about this process. We got problems in college football, and I give you my word. Bo Prabula did not want to leave our program, and he did not want to leave our program until the end of the season. But the way the portal is and the timing of it and the way our team is playing, and when you play the position quarterback, there's only one spot, and those spots are filling up. Everything about this indicates that Bo Prabula was put into a situation where he essentially had to choose between, do you want to pursue your dream of being a starting quarterback at the college level who has a chance to go to the NFL, or do you want to stick at Penn State? And that's an impossible situation for a kid to be in. Like, I understand why there would be Penn State fans who are upset with all this, but ultimately, I'm just pissed at the system that forced Bo Prabula into making a decision to give up on his dream school to do this.
You can be upset at this, but you can't be upset with Bo Prabula for this. I think is the biggest way we want to word this, Bill.
Sure.
Anybody who says anything ill about Bo Prabula is a bad person and is a loser. Like, we'll call it out. Bo sat the bench for 3 years. He found a way to remain involved. He is not quitting on his teammates. This is a failure of the system that the NCAA, a multi-million-dollar organization, has put into place. And it sucks that the kid who grew up wanting to go to Penn State, rooting for Penn State, the first PA quarterback to get a scholarship at Penn State at a high school in like 12 years, I want to say it was. Bo deserved better than this by the NCAA. It would have been cool if he stuck around. I do not think I've seen these takes that it's like he quit on the team or it's like Franklin policy, blah, blah, blah. That's not the case. They would have figured out a way to keep Bo around as long as Bo was willing to stay around for what he means to that locker room. Bo didn't quit on this team. The NCAA failed Bo Prabula. I wish Bo nothing but the best. Wherever he goes, I hope they make the playoff, and I hope they win a national title with Bo as their quarterback. I think the world of that kid, and I think he deserves to be celebrated for what he's done for Penn State. And again, the NCAA is a spineless, cowardly organization who sat on its hands for a decade while the sport crumbled all around it. And Bo Prabula is just a guy who got caught up in the mess of it all, and that just sucks.
Yeah, a core belief that I have is that the NCAA is very happy with stuff like the current approach to NIL, stuff like the transfer portal, all of this, because the way that it all plays out incentivizes at the end of the day getting mad at kids. And I understand why, if you're more of a college football traditionalist, like, I understand why you would have a problem or not like the fact that a guy is leaving his team before the college football playoff starts. I would understand why you would have a problem with, a story like Jaden Rashada at Florida, agreeing to a big bag, and then it falls through, so he leaves Florida to go somewhere. Like, I would understand that. I just ask people to remember at the end of the day, the enemy here is not the kids. The enemy is not the college football programs. It is the people who make decisions in the world of college football, who you never know their names. You never know their faces. You never blame them for these sorts of things, because they are not the ones that have the personal connection with. You have the personal connection with the football team. And for something to happen that negatively impacts them, you are automatically, and it's human nature to do this, going to rebound to being upset at the person that makes the decision and not the one that forces them into this decision. So, like you mentioned, Matt, wherever Bo ends up, as long as it's not like Iowa, I'm going to root for Bo, because I believe that Iowa football does not have the mandate of heaven, neither here nor there. From a football perspective, what do you think? Do you think Penn State's going to, in the event that they are able to go on some sort of run, do you think they are going to miss Bo?
Yeah, I mean, the Bo package was fun. It kept people on their toes, and it worked a lot of the time. At the same time, like if this just means more opportunities for these running backs, the way they're running the football, for more Tyler Warren, for more Drew Aller, I'm fine with it. I think it's going to have minimal impact on the remainder of the games Penn State has on its schedule.
Yeah. Everyone knows my thoughts on the Bo package. I've never been a fan of using it for a myriad of reasons, but here's one thing that I find interesting with Bo Pribula leaving. Against Bowling Green, a one possession game, he carried the ball 2 times for 12 yards. Against Ohio State, a one possession game, he carried the ball 1 time for 0 yards. Against Minnesota, a one possession game, he carried the ball 1 time for 4 yards. Against Oregon, a one possession game, he carried the ball 3 times for 12 yards, with one of those 3 being a sack because Drew came out for a play. Against USC, a one possession game, he didn't carry the ball at all. I think that Penn State fans generally overestimate the impact of how frequently how big of a deal and how big of a part of the offense the Bo package is.
Yep.
And ultimately, if the fallout for the Bo package is Drew Aller is playing more football, I don't think that is a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. I think in very short yardage situation, they will just go tush push.
Mm-hmm.
In situations where they need a yard, they'll snap it to Tyler Warren and tell him to jump over the opposing defensive line. I think, and the other thing is that, like, James Franklin is an insane person about preparation. I cannot fathom that there is any universe where he and the coaching staff weren't prepared for the possibility that Bo was put into an untenable situation where he wasn't going to be around. Like, I ultimately think they are going to be fine without him.
Mm-hmm.
If Drew gets hurt, they're screwed either way, even if Bo is still around. So I am not worried about that.
Agreed.
Well, I am worried about that from the perspective of if Drew gets hurt, they're screwed either way. Not that Bo is not there to come in. At the end of the day, like, I'm more pissed off about the fact that this had to happen, that it was incentivized for this to happen, than the fact that it did happen, Matt.
Yeah. I mean, it's not fair to Bo. It just isn't. This is a kid who wants to be at Penn State. And again, it sucks that if he's going to achieve the ultimate dream of, making the NFL and providing for his family, something that we all, strive to do, it sucks that he has to leave in order to have the best shot at that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But here's hoping that we end up seeing Bo Pribula. Do you have a preferred landing spot for him?
Ooh, a preferred landing spot for Bo. I saw Cal on there. I think him with Jay Knott, if they come back, I think that Cal offense can be really interesting. So
I want him playing for Rich Rod at WVU. I think that would just be so much fun. I really want that one to happen, and it would keep him
close by,
keep him in the area. So yeah, I think that'd be great.
That's a good call.
Any final thoughts before I send the people off to their week, Matt?
No. If you're traveling to the game, travel safe.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to going. I'm getting into town on Friday already. I'm very excited about it. I'm going to be bopping around some bars. I'm excited to be in State College again. It's never a bad time when I'm in State College, Pennsylvania. I'm staying on Allen Street, Bill, right by where you and I used to live.
Where were you on Allen Street? I can't remember.
I was in it was at one point a drug testing facility out front, and then somebody ran like their mayoral campaign out of the front building. I think I was like I
Okay.
was in the 500 block, I want to say. Right by the
Okay,
laundromat right there.
I was on the 600 block, I think.
You
So it's been so long that I don't remember any of this. But neither here nor there. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this
400
edition of
block.
Roar
I
Line.
apologize, Bill. I was in the 400 block. Now it's something out front called the Sign Factory. Interesting.
The Sign Factory. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. I know what you mean now. Okay. Matt and I will continue this conversation another time. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this edition of Roar Line. Roar, make sure you go and subscribe wherever you go and you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review, Spotify, leave us 5 stars over there. YouTube, go and subscribe to our channel, like this video, hop into the comments, talk with Penn State and other various college football fans. Twitter, Blue Sky, we're hanging out on both of those places. And of course, we wanted to send one last shout out to our sponsor, Home Field Apparel. Use the promo code RLR24 for 15% off of your first order. One last time, thank you for listening to this edition of the podcast. For Matt Filipovitz, I'm Bill DeFilippo. Take care, everyone.
Go State.